All right, Mark, let's go. Welcome to another edition of Success Illustrated. My name is Spencer Iverson. This is my partner,
Mark Sterling.
Guys, we are thrilled today because, guys, if you've been really, paying attention and following us, we feel we're bringing a lot of value. And every single week, every single episode, we're showing you more and more and introducing you to more and more entrepreneurs who are absolutely going out there and becoming the embodiment of success. Hence the name Success Illustrated. We're covering all disciplines. I tell you what, the last episode, Pastor Anthony Knotts and Seafood Destiny.
Amazing, huh?
Absolutely amazing. If you have not watched that episode, please go back and watch Pastor Anthony Knotts. I think it was episode 5, Seafood Destiny. Just some major nuggets from pastor turned into profit master, and using marketplace ministries to build a traditional business. But this week, we are super thrilled to have not only somebody who is gifted in the world of real estate, but happens to be my baby brother. This is Iverson of Blacktop Homebuyers.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about all things wholesaling. Ivan has made millions of dollars in the real estate business, showing people and also employing for himself ways and strategies on not only wholesaling homes, but we're going to talk about on today, Mark, is what is wholesaling. We're going to talk about the journey. We're going to talk about how you got started. One of the fascinating, we're not even going to get into it. We're going to jump in some stuff real quick, but one of the things I found out that was just fascinating about this whole world of wholesaling was the fact that you didn't have to have a license, you don't have to have a degree, and it's a huge multi-billion dollar industry that more and more people are getting into, but there are still some secrets because everybody who's jumping in, they're not making millions.
Right.
But we'll get into all of that, Mark, but I know you've had some experience in real estate as well, right? Talk about that.
I remember one of our projects, our income streams went away dramatically, right? Mm-hmm. So we found ourselves not having an income for a minute. And we started following people that were in this real estate space. And they were talking about the concept of wholesaling. And I was like, wholesale? Like, I know wholesale, you mean buy it cheap or buy it cost. How do you buy a house at cost? So it didn't make sense to me. And later on, I found out that, it's not just a concept, but it's a strategy that you can implement to find homes that are distressed or find homes that maybe have tax challenges or homes, for example, that people were willed or inherited, or they're basically homes that people want to get rid of but maybe don't think that they have the credit to invest or repair themselves, or they don't have the equity or the cash on hand. And maybe the end user just wants to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. There's so many different scenarios, but you can actually be the solution, the bridge, if you will, in the middle to take the person who has a challenge and move it to an investor or maybe a person that does renovations. You can find something like that. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we found that, and it provided a great source of income in a time that we were looking for something. But the reality is there's a lot of work that has to happen. A tremendous amount of work has to happen, but there's a lot of information that most people don't want to go through and learn. But they'll see individuals like your brother, like Ivan, who has dramatic success, but they don't understand all the journey and they quit too early before they get to the reward. So I think that kind of leads us right in to what is wholesaling from your perspective.
Well, let's back up. Before we get into wholesaling, we got to set up. Let people know about your background.
Okay.
How do we even get here, right? So talk about where you went to school. Did you go to school?
Right,
did you hoop?
Yeah, well, that's a great lead in. But I did go to school. I grew up in Valdosta, Georgia, South Georgia, obviously, as you know. But it is Titletown on Netflix. So
yes,
so you guys know what it is. But obviously grew up in Valdosta. Valdosta is a heavy sports town, so I played basketball there. Just happened to be, pretty good in basketball. Went on to play in college in Montgomery, Alabama. Went to Faulkner University, got my degree in business administration. Left there and went to law school at the University of Richmond. Left Richmond in 2001 and moved to Atlanta, and I was here for 20 years before in the last 2 years I moved to the DMV area. So that's a little bit of my background and my educational background. And it's funny that, a lot of people in the world that we live in today are not working in their specific field, but there's a lot of tips and tools and strategies and things that I've learned from my educational background that have helped me, in business. So I wouldn't say that education is not important, but it's also not vital to success. So not collegiate or scholastic, after high school education. It's still very worthy. I think college is important, for social aspects, and for just, educational growth and understanding yourself as you grow up. But there's a lot of different ways you can educate yourself and become very successful, as we've seen, with other entrepreneurs, throughout this country's history that don't have college degrees and that have gone on to be, some of the wealthiest people in the world. So,
absolutely.
So let's start now with some of your earlier forays into entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Did you have mentors? Did you have a vision of what entrepreneurship? Did you just stumble across it? But let's go down the journey, Mark, because we all had to start at ground zero.
Yes.
Right.
All of us have, man. The first time I tried to start a business, what was that first business? What was the motivation behind it? And take us from there.
The first example of entrepreneurship that I saw in my life was probably our father.
That's right.
Our father was a minister, just retired here recently, a few years ago. John Iverson, Sr., yes. And, we saw him, involved in various different entrepreneurial efforts, on top of, what he was doing as a minister and in his ministry. And so that was my first example of what entrepreneurship looked like. I guess I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I remember early on, I would always talk about wanting to own a sports store, selling sporting goods. That was kind of my goal. Just being around sports was my thing, right? Okay. And so, it's funny, one of the really first successful entrepreneurs I met was when I was in law school. I worked for a guy who owned a company called Collegiate Instructors.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And he had a very successful tutoring business he used college students that were still very relatable to, the students that they were working with or tutoring. And he had a very successful, program, had a very successful business. And I just loved the idea. So when I first moved to Atlanta, me and one of my other partners that was getting his MBA at University of Richmond, D, shout out to D, he's a big executive at Bank of America now. But we thought about bringing that idea to Atlanta. But we didn't really, and we talked to the owner of Collegiate Instructors about it, and he was all for it, and but we just didn't understand, how business worked, the nuts and bolts of how to operate that type of business. And so we tried, and it just didn't work out long term the way that we wanted. But again, it's just a great learning experience.
Yeah. What was the biggest thing? What were one of the biggest takeaways from that failure, if you will?
One of the biggest takeaways was understanding how to grow a business logistically.
Okay.
One of the biggest things you have to understand about being an entrepreneur is that you have to make sure that you understand all the inner workings of whatever business that you're involved in before you get started, so that you know how to attack it. And so we thought, hey, we can go out here, get some students, send them to people's houses, right? And that wasn't, how the business worked. Before you started hiring students, there were certain steps that you needed to take, certain things that you needed to have in place if you're going to be sending people into different people's homes. So all of those things, just the logistics of it, that was one of the biggest things that I learned, is that if you're going to have a successful business, you need to know how this business works, the nuts and bolts of it, and really start to understand, how do I attack? What's the first step? What's the one thing that I need to master? And that's what a lot of people miss. They want to do everything.
Right.
What's the one thing that I need to learn to be able to be successful in whatever industry that I'm in? So that was the one biggest thing that I learned from that. I guess the other biggest entrepreneurial endeavor that I took on was a sneaker store. I'm a big sneaker guy, sneaker investor on all social media platforms. Check that out. But one of the biggest things that I learned, I opened a sneaker store. And that was always a goal of mine.
And it was super dope. Super dope. Man, you had the who's who of Atlanta. You had celebrities flying in. You had radio stations doing remote. You had guys from the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
So pro athletes, when they would come in town to play, would come by your spot.
Yeah, I mean, we had
the throwback jersey.
Yeah, we had. I mean, we had a great location right off of Howell Mill here in Atlanta, and we were just fortunate, because I had been, collecting and buying sneakers for a while, that I just knew people in the sneaker industry. And, they would stop by, Hawks players. I mean, we had Jim Jones. We had Nas even stop by. I mean, so we it was a great early experience in entrepreneurship. But again, just less than a year, close to a year after we had been open, we had a break-in. Mm-hmm. And, I just didn't want to deal with the headache of, it felt like this was going to, because during that time in Atlanta, people were breaking into all types of boutiques and stores. It was just kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I was like, I don't really want to deal with the headache of this over and over again, right? Because that's kind of what it felt like. And at that time, we didn't have a Nike account. Mm-hmm. What we were doing, we had so many relationships that we were able to kind of build our business off the backs of other people who did have Nike accounts, who would, provide us with different things, here and there that really helped our business grow. And getting a Nike account is super difficult, especially now. It's almost impossible now. But just again, another lesson learned about how to approach business, understanding, how to protect your asset. Because I love sneakers, but I didn't, the fact selling sneakers to other people, I learned really quickly, if this was going to be, what was involved in that industry, that it wasn't something I wanted to do long term. So
now let's talk about your personal sneaker collection real quick. Okay. Take a quick side. You have approximately how many sneakers in your collection right now?
I haven't counted in a while. At least, I'll be conservative and say at least 850.
Wow.
Probably closer to 1,000
pairs of shoes.
Man, that sounds like a credit score.
We wish.
Great credit score.
I remember we were moving him one day, right? It took us longer to move his shoes than it did all the other important stuff, right? It was. I was just praying that nobody saw us moving his stuff out or in, because I'm like, dude, that's a target. He's a target, right? All right, so we're looking at the entrepreneurship journey. Right now, you 0 for 2. Right, you 0 for 2. Yeah. So obviously at that point you decided that entrepreneurship was not for you. You quit, and so what happened from the 0 for 2? Right.
I mean, not at all. I mean, look, I'm really driven. Right. I'm really self-motivated. I think that comes from my basketball background. In sports you're gonna have failures. You're not gonna win every game. Mm-hmm. There'll be some games that you lose. There're gonna be some games that you really don't play well. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you learn that, look, there's always another game. There's always another opportunity to get better. And that, some people need external motivation. Mm-hmm. God has just blessed me where I don't need that. I'm like, okay, look, hey, if somebody else can do it, I can do it too. And I'm going to try to do it better. Right. So, I really didn't know. I knew I wanted to get involved in something that could, provide financial security and safety for my family. And it happened to become real estate after just I was at this time I was working for Fulton County, and I ran across Max Maxwell and his videos on real estate. Now everybody who's in real estate or close to real estate know who he is, but end up meeting him. Getting some mentorship from him and going on to go to one of his first events. He has an event. Well, before pre-COVID, he was having an event yearly called Wholesaling Live or Wholesaling Elite. And so end up going to one of his first ones in Charlotte, meeting a lot of good people, a lot of great relationships. And even before that event, though, I was already getting involved in real estate investing. And the one thing that I saw, and Spencer kind of already mentioned it, that attracted me to real estate investing. I always liked real estate. I liked the idea of, going into new construction and seeing the different things that they were doing and turning something that was not that valuable, into something that could, make you an extreme profit. Right. But the one thing that I enjoyed about the strategy of real estate, of wholesaling, and let me clear that up, because a lot of people say I'm a wholesaler. Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know what that is unless you're selling T-shirts and pens and, that's what makes you a wholesaler. In real estate, wholesaling is a strategy as a real estate investor. There are a lot of strategies. Mm-hmm. Wholesaling is just one of those strategies that allow you to do something with a distressed asset. There's other things that you can do with that asset, but one of the things that you can do with that asset is wholesale it. Okay. And so we can get into that in a minute. But real estate, being a real estate investor, one of the things that attracted to me that you mentioned was that it doesn't take a lot of money. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a lot of credit, but you do have to have a work ethic. Yeah. Because it's not easy. Sure. There's a lot of work involved.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah, the concept is simple, most businesses. All successful businesses solve problems. Mm-hmm. That's it. You know, all these entrepreneurs have just found a problem that they're able to solve, and they're able to solve it for a lot of people. And because they do that, they make a lot of money.
Right.
And that's really what being a real estate investor is. We're helping people solve their problems that's associated with real estate.
So let me take a step back. You mentioned that you were going to these events. And I'm sure they were totally free.
Oh no, no.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you had to pay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I get to the weeds. Give me some price points of some of these events.
I mean, they could range anywhere. If you're just going to an event, maybe a weekend event, you know, in the real estate world, I mean, you're probably going to pay minimum of $500, maximum of about $2,500 per person.
Okay, so and that's kind of, and normally those are the ones that kind of wet your whistle a little bit to get you excited, right?
Right.
But then they're the ones that they really dive in and give you the nuts and bolts. They give you the how-tos, the processes, which is really where the rubber meets the road, right? How much are some of those events?
I mean, if it depends on the person who's throwing the event.
Okay.
Because the one thing I enjoyed about Max's event was that there were people who were in the business. And he made this a purpose of his event, is I want people who are actually in the business. Okay, not people who are teaching or people who are, you know, who were in the business 20 years ago. But I want people who are actively doing it, coming, sharing the tips and tricks of their business with the people that are here.
Right.
So it really depends on the person that you align yourself with, you know, in their event.
Sure.
Because there are people who will have a $10,000 event. You may not learn anything.
Exactly. Right.
It's just a pitch fest.
Right,
I got this, I got that.
Right.
Now I'm gonna get, this is it. But if you really want to know, you know, so, you know, but there are other people, like Max's event was very affordable, and you were getting instructional things that you can take with you and start to apply immediately to start making money.
And I heard something else you said, and I hope our listening audience gets this. You went to the event, you paid a fee, but there's a difference in the price and the cost. Right. The price is the dollar amount. The cost is how much you're going to lose if you don't go.
Right.
But the other thing I heard was the aha moments came with the connections between the people, even during the event.
Yes.
Can you talk about the connections and have any of those benefited you long term?
I mean, my business partner I met at that event.
Oh, let's pause right there. Let's shout out. Let's shout out to going to an event, meeting someone, and you make millions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
my business partner Eddie. What up, Eddie?
Shout out to Eddie.
But I met him at that event. Another guy, Justin, who's, you know, Justin Coble, who I met at that event. I mean, he did. He's doing really, really well. Actually, a few days ago, he did 100,000 in a day. So,
shout out to 100,000 a day.
He's doing really well. So,
shout out to Big Stacks.
So yeah, those going to the events and meeting like-minded people,
right?
And just that interaction, is priceless. It's priceless because you're around people who they're at least interested in something that you're interested in. And then you could start to decipher who's serious. Right? Because 90% of the people that go to these events, they're going to go home and study for another year. Right? They call it analysis paralysis. They're going to analyze and watch, 100 more hours worth of YouTube videos.
Right.
And, well, let me learn this. And then and then there are people who just like, look, hey, I'm going to
build a plane as you fly.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
Right? You jump out the plane and figure out the parachute on your way down type people. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was actually 6 months before the event, I had started. I started back in March of 2018.
Okay.
Right. And so I was driving for dollars, which we can get into in a minute, which is another great, lead funnel, so to speak. And, through that process, I was watching YouTube. But what I was doing was like, oh, they do this? Okay, I'm going to go do that tomorrow. Right. And so I was taking action, not really knowing what I was doing, but learning as I went. And so about 6 weeks after I started, I was able to get my first deal under contract. About 2 weeks later, I was able to close that deal. It was a $20,000 deal. That was all I needed, proof of concept.
Yeah.
And because I was following up with people that I was getting these addresses and phone numbers from, I was able to close another deal 2 weeks later, and then it was off to the races.
Okay. Let's break down the first deal.
Okay.
Right. Let's break down the first deal. Because again, you said that you'd been working for about 6 months before you got the first deal.
Well, before the event.
Before the event.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about the processes.
Okay.
I don't know anything about wholesaling.
Okay.
You know, which we now realize that most people have been using in the wrong way.
Right.
You know, as opposed to using it as a verb, they've been using it as an adjective.
Right.
Right. You're saying wholesaling is a verb. It's just a strategy. Right. So shout out to the English majors out there. So anyway, so let's talk about. Okay, I'm brand new. Right.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned driving for dollars, right? What is driving for dollars? I've done it, Mark. You've done it. It is a very thankless way. But listen, y'all, this is a very humbling. I appreciated it because what you learn how to do, you learn the business. Yeah. This is the business. It's almost like Waffle House. When I was at Georgia Tech, nobody ever wanted to intern at Waffle House because at Waffle House internship meant that you worked in Waffle House. Mm-hmm. You scrambled eggs, you did hash browns, and you made waffles. Yeah. Their philosophy was they didn't want anybody as an executive who did not understand what it was like to work in the store. Right. Same thing in building a business. We're building a business right now. We are, listen, we are building this thing literally brick by brick. But the great thing is if it ever breaks, we know how to fix it because we built it. Right. Same thing in real estate and wholesaling. Right. Driving for dollars is one of those bricks. Talk about driving for dollars.
Okay, first let's back up a little bit. I want to talk about the strategy of wholesaling and what that is. Really what it is locating distress in real estate. That's really what wholesaling is. Okay. And that's what makes this a valuable strategy, is because you're able to identify distress, able to communicate with the owner of this real estate, why it would be beneficial to them, or sometimes they're letting you know why it would be beneficial for you to purchase this property, give them cash to alleviate their distressful situation and make it a win-win situation for everybody involved. So it's really locating a property that is in a distressed state. There's a lot of distress. Okay, there are areas that we call financial distress, which is being tax delinquent, behind on your taxes, having a lot of code violations, where you're getting these fines from the city or the municipality regarding the condition of your property. Or there's people who inherit properties, which is through the probate process, that don't want it or can't afford the taxes that are about to be due, things of that nature. And then there's just the condition itself, where the property may be run down, and all of those are what we call financial distress. And then there's situational distress or personal distress, where somebody may have gotten divorced and now they need to sell a property, right? Or somebody may
pre-foreclosure.
Pre-foreclosure, which is another form of financial distress in a sense. Or somebody may have gotten a new job and they need to relocate really quickly, and maybe they don't have a lot of equity in the property, or maybe they want to carry 2 mortgages. And then there's tired landlords, which is our number one source right now of people who own 1 to 4 properties, and maybe they haven't received rent in 18 months now, and they're like, okay, look, I don't want to do this because they don't have a large portfolio and this has become a burden. And so those are areas of distress. And one thing about this business, people always say, oh, well, you're never going to run out of distress. People are always going to be distressed. And so it's the idea of understanding that there's always going to be an opportunity for you to make money in real estate, especially as a real estate investor. Okay. It's the mentality of abundance. But as we get into the lead channels, driving for dollars is still my favorite lead channel. It's how I started. And really all it is driving around different neighborhoods, looking for these signs of distress that I just mentioned. Blue tarp on the roof. Well, there's a reason there's a tarp on the roof. They ain't got that roof fixed for a reason, right? No mailbox. If there's no mailbox there, somebody's not living there because they're not getting any mail, The house is boarded up. That's an obvious sign of distress. Obviously, if it's boarded up, nobody's living there. If there's no curtains or drapes, then there's probably nobody living there because nobody wants anybody looking in their house all the time, right?
Unkept yard.
Exactly. If you go through a neighborhood and everybody else's yard is manicured and this, looks like the jungle, then that's probably a sign that nobody's living in the house. Right. One of my favorite ways, and this is a tip to everybody, is ask around the neighborhoods. You see somebody mowing their lawn, ask them, hey, when is trash day? Right? And they'll say, oh, well, they pick up the trash on Monday. Around what time do they come? Oh, they come at, 11 in the morning. You want to drive that neighborhood before they come pick up the trash. Because what I'm looking for is who doesn't have their trash can out. Okay, if somebody doesn't have their trash can out, there's a good chance that maybe there's nobody living there. Even if they just missed a day, I still want to write that address down because there may be a situation where nobody's living there, or the house is in distress, or who knows, right? But it's just another identifier of what could possibly be distressed.
Shout out to hidden gems.
Yes, hidden gems. So driving for dollars allows you to see the distress. Okay, which is the beauty of driving for dollars. When you reach out to this person through calling them or texting them or whatever your method is, you don't have to wonder, is this property distressed? Because at this point in our business, we call all types of people. So a lot of people are calling. We know that there may be identifiers of distress because of the type of list we pull, but we don't know for sure, right? But when you're driving for dollars, I see that property is in distress. I know it. Right. Now, they may not be ready to sell, or there may be emotional attachment, whatever it is. But you can't tell me your house is in perfect condition, or you can't tell me there's not some type of issue going on, right? That's what I love about driving for dollars, because I don't have to guess about the distress. And so then you're reaching out to these people and just asking them if they're interested in a cash offer for their property. So that's driving for dollars as a lead channel.
Right. And there are multiple lead channels, right? You got the temporary signs. What do you call those signs?
You got bandit signs.
Yeah, bandit signs.
You got
the direct mail campaigns.
Direct mail.
But driving for dollars is one where, like you say, you can see the distress up close and personal. So you've got this list of names. You've driven for that. You've written down the addresses, and then you go into something called skip tracing, where you're trying to identify who the owner of this particular property is, so you'll know who to contact. Right.
And skip tracing allows you to be able to get that person's contact information.
And it's a matter of public record.
Well, it is.
Okay.
But before you start skip tracing, the beauty of this business is that a lot of the resources are free.
Yeah.
Right. So I can get this person's address. Every county and municipality in the country has a tax assessor, right? Because the county wants to make sure that they're paid their property taxes. So they need to know who the owner of these properties are, right? So you go to the tax assessor's website in any county in America. You type in that address, and they're going to let you know if that property, who that property is owned by. Sometimes it's an individual, sometimes it's an LLC. And what you want to do if you're starting this is you don't want to worry about the LLCs, because that's more high level, digging and research that you have to do. When you get started, you just want to deal with your Jimmys and your Joes, the individual homeowners, right? So you write down the name of this homeowner, and then you take that information. Now you have everything that you need to skip trace. You have the name and you have the property address. So now I could take that to multiple skip tracing services. These days, when I first started, maybe there were, 3 skip tracing companies, and it was really expensive. Now there's 300, and it's really inexpensive to skip trace.
Right. Okay.
You put this in an Excel sheet, you upload it in the way that they want, which is relatively easy. And in anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, they're kicking you back the phone numbers of these people. And now it's up to you to take the next step to reach out to them and see if they're interested in selling that property.
Wow. Listen, guys, you all are getting a masterclass.
Absolutely.
A masterclass in wholesaling properties and how you can turn your passion into profit. Your passion is real estate, and you turned it into tremendous millions of dollars worth of profit. And let's talk about now, I've got this list. Now, talk about some of the conversations, because if you're in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure, or, you had a situation with your house that has put you in distress, not only is the house in distress, you're in distress, right? So was there any apprehension in making these phone calls, man, he's going to cuss me out or whatever, because some people, they can do all of that, but then when it comes down to the art of the deal, making that dial, man, there's this apprehension, right?
Yeah. That's probably what holds people back. One of the main reasons that hold people back from having success really in any sales business, because that's what this is at the end of the day. When it comes to this particular portion of the business, it's sales. It's sales and marketing, right? And what holds most people back is that the next step of actually having to deal with people, right? And so I wasn't apprehensive, because I knew the money that some people were making.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, hey, look, I need some of that, right? So right. I'm like, if I got to call this lady, she about to get a call from me. Yeah. So, but it's really just understanding that you're talking to another human being. Okay, this you're probably gonna get cussed out on one of these calls. Okay, so be it.
And here's why. Because
you're not the only person calling.
If the distress is that obvious, it's obvious to other people. Like you were wholesaling, and I did this before. Obviously, I'll tell that story in a second. But they've gotten a ton of calls from other people, and so your call could be the one that just pushes them over to cussing you out.
That's right. That's right. We're not in this business alone, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people who are, in the real estate investment world, right? And so these people are getting multiple calls, right? This business is about timing, and the fortune is in the follow-up, as in any sales. You have to find people at the time that they're ready. Yes, we're not going to get every deal, but we just need to get our percentage of deals to make it make sense for our business,
right? Sure.
Right? But when you make the call, the number one thing you have to do is understand that this is just another person. I can give you a script. I can give you all these different psychological tips and tricks that we teach our team. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you say. It matters that you're reaching out, okay, and introducing yourself and telling them, hey, look, this is why I'm calling you. And, I'm an investor. I'm local. All these important things that they need to hear.
Right.
And I'm going to offer you cash for your property. Okay. And so it's really just getting on the phone, getting your attempts up. It's just like if you're an athlete. I talk a lot about in sports references, but in sports analogies. But if you're an athlete, the difference between Kobe and Michael and LeBron, the greats, Oscar Robertson, depending on how old you are.
Michael Jordan's greatest of all time.
But when you look at the greats, there's a lot of people who are excellent at basketball. A lot of people who have if you're in the NBA, you're really good. You're one of the top players in the world, one of the top 400 players in the world.
Planet Earth, that's right.
Right. The reason these guys excel above those guys, it's not their talent and ability, it's their work ethic. It's the fact that they are obsessed with being great. And if you watch The Last Dance, you saw that with Michael Jordan about, this was a guy who got cut from his high school basketball team. And that was one of his biggest motivators. He talked about that in his Hall of Fame speech.
Sure.
That was one of his biggest motivators, was that, look, I got cut. So guess what? I could either stop basketball altogether, or I could work harder, where next year they couldn't keep me off the team. And so it's not, everybody has talent. It's just what's going to take you to the thing that's going to take you to the next level above everybody else is your work ethic and your attitude of like, I'm not going to quit, and the attitude of abundance.
That's true. Yeah.
There's enough out here for everybody. I would rather work with you than compete against you, because if we work together, we can make more money together. Yeah, it's a collaborative mentality. Yeah. And people are always like, well, there's too many people doing this.
It's saturated.
There's too many people in real estate investing. How do you know?
Right.
How do you know? When your friend opened McDonald's, did you say, man, there's too many McDonald's?
Wow.
Right.
Man, when's the last time you saw McDonald's closing their doors?
Never.
And that makes you think about, people talk about a market is saturated.
Right.
And I go to Home Depot, and everybody has a refrigerator. But Home Depot, Circuit City, Best Buy, they all have refrigerators.
Yeah.
So markets are never saturated.
No.
Because there's always something that someone wants to upgrade, or something expires, whatever. But I remember a point you made earlier about making the dials anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to shift what no means.
Right.
No, I'll give you an example. I remember I was in a commission-based company, right? Funny how that works.
Right.
And we made $150 every time we made a sale.
Okay.
Right. It wasn't a tremendous amount of money, but I knew I needed $1,000 a week.
Right.
So I started realizing that I wasn't really good at talking or being scripted because I was new. So I said, man, what these other guys, they would talk to 10 people and they would get 3 sales.
Right.
And I said, what they know in skill, I have to make up for in numbers. So I started tracking myself, and every 10th sale on average, I would get a sale. So in my mind, I associated each no to $15.
Yeah.
So when someone told me no, I didn't tell them that personally, but I said, man, thank you for $15.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I got excited for no's because I was one $15 bill away from $150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, sometimes I call it, I built a strategy around it, reframe and rename. So what I did was I reframed the situation and renamed the disappointment.
Right.
So my disappointment was no longer a disappointment. It was a bridge that was that much closer to my end result.
Right.
Nice.
Right. In our business, we tell our team, no just means not right now.
Sure.
Because, you know, we're dealing in distress. So yeah, you may not be ready to sell right now. You may not like our price. You may not understand our price. And that's a big part, I think, of why we're successful, is that we spend a lot of time educating our sellers. Because honestly, most people in real estate have no idea about real estate. The only thing they know is, I need a mortgage to buy a house. And if I want to sell a house or buy a house, I need to call a realtor. That's all they know about real estate.
Sure.
That's it. So you have to educate people in distress a lot of times about, you know, why you're buying at certain prices, you know, why they're continuing to get calls. Like, why this is the reason why. This is the reason why we're not the only ones calling you, so forth and so on.
And that strategy sticks in people's mind. What I tried, when you taught me the art of wholesaling, I try to make my conversations memorable, because in my mind, I was one of those people, man, it's saturated. It's a lot of people doing this. I knew this from some previous experiences, that I had to find a way to stay memorable, remain memorable to the person I was talking to.
Right.
If everybody, so there's a reason why this lady is upset that I'm calling her. Man, you calling about this house? And man, I thought, oh God, I mean, I just knew it was coming. So I used some of my background. I said, ma'am, I would say things like, ma'am, I'm an attorney and I invest and pay cash for homes. And, you know, I see, and I would find something in that property, something about its location.
Right.
I would be a very good active listener with one guy, for example. He was out of Chicago, who happened to have a property in Atlanta, and it was distressed. And so he, in passing, first thing I talked about was how bad the Bears were. I just lightened the mood, man. Y'all Bears suck this year. Dude, what you know about them Bears? Y'all Falcons suck too. And we just started some kind of banter to ease the. I didn't just jump right in, sir. Yeah, I'm a wholesaler. I invest in real estate. I would love to make an offer on your. I didn't jump right into the pitch.
Right.
I just started the art of conversation. And then he told me he had a 12-year-old son. His son was trying to follow in his footsteps of being an entrepreneur. I told him about Brandon, my son, who's an entrepreneur. I got him a copy of Brandon's book. That stuck in his mind.
Yeah.
So when other people are calling, it's like, yeah, but this dude about the kid with the, he might not remember my name. He might not remember anything about my name of my company. But the guy who had a son with the book, who was going to give my son a copy of his book. Right. Wow, that stuck. And so we didn't do a deal, but he did rely on me. He called me, and he just never got to the point where he was ready. Right. Same thing with the older lady. It's just talking about the grandkids, and there was something about Haley that, and I just put the two together in a conversation.
Right.
My point is, I found a way to try to stick out and raise above the noise of everybody else who was just trying to pitch a deal.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, and that, you know, you have to understand that, you know, this, at the core of this business is marketing, right? But even more importantly than that is people. You're dealing with people that have a problem. And you just want to be able to provide a solution. Some of our best deals, honestly, have come from people who may have cussed us out. Because a lot of people will never call them back or can't survive that moment.
Yeah.
What you have to understand is you have to meet that person where they are. You can't be in this business and be afraid of friendly confrontation.
Yes.
Right? That person may be cussing you out. You're like, hey, look, man. Look, I'm calling you to put money in your pocket. So what we're not about to do is have this type of conversation. Now, if you don't want to sell your house, just tell me that. But you're not about to talk to me crazy.
Right, right.
And you'll be surprised how many people are like, oh, man, you know, my bad, my bad. Because you survived.
Yeah.
Right.
You survived. Most people are like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, and hang up. Right? But you survived, and they understood, like, oh, this person is not afraid of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You survived that moment, and you explain them, like, look, you're going to be the beneficiary of this in the long run.
Right.
I'm trying to help you with a problem I know you have.
Right.
Now, I mean, we never mention their point of distress. We want them to bring that up to us.
Okay.
But once you survive that onslaught of frustration and you get them to calm down and understand, like, look, you know, this is going to be beneficial for you.
Sure.
So calm down so we can have a real conversation.
All right. So we've talked about some lead strategies, skip tracing, et cetera. We talked about, you know, what wholesaling is. Now let's get into the art of the deal.
Right.
So people want to get to the bag. They want to hear about the money. You know, talk about how, because one of the things that was appealing to me, and it was a misconception, Mark, I always had, and maybe some of the listeners who are watching on YouTube, be listening on the podcast, you may have as well. I didn't understand how in the world you could get into this project, into real estate investing with no money out of pocket. Right. It blew me away.
Right.
And once I learned that game, it all made sense.
Yeah.
That I'm just really just moving paper. That's all I'm doing.
Right.
Right. And giving myself a 30-day window to find somebody with the real money.
Right.
And then I get credit for it.
Right.
But talk a little bit about the art of the deal and how literally you can get started in wholesaling, acquire your first property, and it costs you absolutely no money out of pocket.
Exactly. So the strategy of wholesaling is key to being a successful real estate investor. You can't be successful in real estate investing without understanding wholesaling, because it's at the core of every deal. Being a real estate investor is finding a deal that makes sense financially for everybody involved. And so it's at the you're basically the middleman when you're practicing the strategy of wholesaling. You're the middleman in the whole real estate investment world, because your job is to find a property that's in distress. And what you have to understand, and a lot of people don't understand this, and I'll give you a quick example, is that your offer is based on condition, okay, not the market. Okay, it's not the market, because what a lot of people say, oh, my neighbor's house sold for $400,000.
Sure.
Oh, that's great. When's the last time you saw your neighbor's house?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. It's been a few months. Have you ever seen people working out there, a dumpster, and people coming in and out? Oh yeah, they were doing that 2 months ago. Have you seen it since they finished? Oh no. This is what I suggest. I want you to go ask your neighbor, John, if you can go into his house and just see what it looks like, okay? And then I'm going to call you back tomorrow, and you tell me what it looks like. And then you call him back and like, oh, the house is beautiful. Does your house look like that? No, my house doesn't look like that at all.
Right.
You know what? All those people that were coming in and out in that dumpster, all this stuff costs money.
Sure.
Now, if you want to do that, then you can get exactly what John got for his house. But if you don't, we have to take on that expense. We are one of our partners that we work with have to take on that expense. And we're not Habitat for Humanity. We're not a nonprofit. We got to make some money on this deal.
Right.
This is a business.
Right.
And so this has to work for me and for you and for some of our investment partners that we work with. Everybody has to be happy.
Sure.
And so when you make an offer on a distressed property, the number one thing, because we get deals that come to us now, because we buy deals now, that are horrible. And we're like, this doesn't make any sense, because what a lot of real estate investors don't understand is that everybody has to win, okay? I can't get a property under contract. And what wholesaling is getting this property under contract for $100. Knowing that it will sell for $220,000 once it's all fixed up, which we call the after repair value, or ARV. Okay, so we can get it under contract at $100. We know that it takes about $40,000 to renovate it, and we know that from doing renovations ourselves, but before, from building relationship with general contractors who can tell us. So we know it's going to take $40,000 to repair. And so we know that an investor is probably going to want to be all in at about $180,000 on this property. So we know if we can get it under contract at $180,000, we can sell it to this investor for $140,000. He can put $40,000 in it and sell it for $220,000. Right? So I can't get this property under contract for $150,000.
Right.
Because now it doesn't make sense for the person who I need to assign the rights in this contract to, who is the renovator, or the person who wants to use it as a rental property, add it to their portfolio. I have to get this property under contract for less than $140,000 for it to make sense. Okay,
you're creating your own margins,
right? I'm creating the margin in the deal, and I have to understand the numbers, and that's where a lot of people. This is a numbers business.
Yes,
I have to understand the numbers. You have to understand what it takes to renovate a property. You have to understand how much it takes, what they can actually sell that property for once it's completely renovated, are the ARV, and there's formulas and things for all of that. But at the end of the day, that's where mentorship comes in. A lot of times, is you getting with somebody who is already involved in the business, who is doing deals currently, who can help you understand how to get involved in this business the right way, so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls that they may have taken to get into this business, right? But, there are a lot of people who are real estate investors who may do one deal a year. Right? That's great. But they're not entrepreneurs, because that's a hobby. Okay? There's a lot of people who are fly-by-night real estate investors, but there are not a lot of people who have real estate investment businesses.
It's
right?
different.
Creating a business that consistently earns you money, and you have employees. One of the greatest things I heard one time was that you're not an entrepreneur if you don't have people depending on you.
That's strong.
That is really good.
Right? And you're really not an entrepreneur until you have employees.
Yeah, man.
Right? And because the whole goal of being an entrepreneur, I want to replace myself from all this daily stuff.
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to make the calls for the rest of my life. You
Right.
know, I want to hire people and train people that can do but if I haven't done them myself, I can't properly train you.
Right.
Right? And so it's understanding the numbers part of this business is very, very important. And if you're not familiar with real estate, a realtor, or been involved in renovating properties, that's one of the hardest things to understand or to get to know is how do I make the right kind of offer? And how do I explain to this person that, hey, I can only give you this much for your property because of the condition. Because they're always going to bring up the market, but my offer can't be based on the market because your property isn't in market condition, right? And so it's just understanding these things, and the best way to learn them is to get with somebody who's doing it. But just don't run up on somebody and be like, hey, look, man, hey, I'm gonna call you, man. Let's talk to me about 3 hours about real estate. If you're dealing with somebody who's successful, they don't have the time to do that.
No, we don't.
Agreed.
You need to be able to provide value.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what can I do? Hey, you looking for somebody to drive for dollars? Cool, I can do that for you. Let's work together. Provide some value to a person. Or if you don't want to do that, pay somebody.
Yeah.
Sure.
Paying for the time.
Right? There are a lot of people who have courses and all this. Pay somebody who's in the business. I'll go to an event.
we have a partner, who talked to him about our partner who and what he charges per hour for his time now in the area of podcasting.
So we have a great friend that we actually sat down with.
Sure
In fact, he for years he called me his mentor.
Okay.
Right, and he wound up going off into podcasting, and he's one of the top podcast shows for entrepreneurs in the world.
Okay.
Shout out David Shans.
Shout out to David Shans.
Yeah, I know
Sleepers for
David.
Suckers.
I know David.
Right.
Sleepers for Suckers.
Sleepers for Suckers. That's
Social
my
Proof
guy.
Podcast, number one.
All that, and even though he's very close to me, and Spencer knows him as well, I didn't want to waste his time. So we offered, at a minimum, we took him to lunch. We sat down with him at lunch. We went over a few things, and we didn't waste. We took an hour.
Right.
But from there, we had a small framework, and we went and did literally weeks and weeks and hours of research on top of that. So there are always two questions as an entrepreneur that I like to ask: where's the work and where are the potholes?
Right.
Because if I know the work is, 95% of people will never do it.
Never.
Like you said, analysis paralysis,
Yeah.
right? And then the potholes, I call that standing on the shoulders of giants. And I'm going down the interstate. We live in Atlanta, I-85. We got 6 lanes of traffic each way. But if I know that in the far 3 right lanes, there are potholes, I'm going to stay in the far left lane.
Right.
So if I can reduce my barrier of friction, if I can reduce the challenges, I'm going to get that through mentorship or for driving. One last thing in this space. The guy that I learned a lot of wholesaling from, I sat with him for 3 weeks. Not sat with, I drove my car and took him around neighborhoods for 3 weeks. Had other people in the car that he was selling deals to.
Yeah.
I would see daily 20,000, 40,000 and up deals being done because I drove him around. He didn't tell me a thing he did, but I learned being in the environment because I volunteered my services.
Right.
So I'm proof positive that what you said actually works.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm proof positive that what he says works because Ivan mentored me in wholesale. I went by his apartment at the time, and he laid everything out the next day. I'm in a Mercedes S550 driving on the south side of Atlanta for dollars, slow rolling through neighborhoods, looking for high grass, boarded up houses and tarps, right? I had a list of about probably 50 to 60 homes. He gave me the zip code and everything, right? The very next day, and guys, let me tell you something, just show you how God worked. The very next day, I started dialing for dollars, did my research, skip trace, all that kind of stuff. Called the first number, no answer. Second number was the guy who people had been calling forever. Had anger in his voice because this house had everything. This house, pre-foreclosure, code violation, had a what do you call it, a squatter living in the house. I mean, you name it, he lived in LA and the property was in Atlanta. And he didn't want to deal with it no more, right? He was tired of flying from LA to Atlanta just to cut grass so he could avoid a code violation. Anyway, I started talking to him, and he was kind of embarrassed because he was in pre-foreclosure and pre-bankruptcy. I said, man, we can fix that. Man, y'all, can we fix your pre-foreclosure? Dude, we can. I had no idea if we could fix it or not. I'm just trying to get the deal. Long story short, he said, man, I can't make it. You called me at the right time. He said, you called me at my second call. Now, understand, I'm building the plane as a fly. I had just left Ivan's apartment the night before. I knew nothing about wholesaling. And then on the way there and driving around, I was listening to this a podcast.
Yeah.
What was the name of the
Wholesaling Inc.
Wholesaling Inc. podcast. Shout out Wholesaling podcast.
Yeah.
Dude, I was just listening to it. And the thing that scared me, Mark, was that I was listening to people's stories. Yes, I've been trying to wholesale for 2 years. I haven't got my first deal yet. So, and then another, yeah, man, I've been wholesaling, man, about 8 months, man. I'm getting close and close to my first deal. I'm like, God, I ain't got no 8. I got 8 hours to get my first deal. I have 8 hours. I need a deal in 8 hours. But I was like, yo, man, people have been working months and years, haven't gotten one deal. My second phone call.
That's crazy.
My second phone. Long story short, we worked that deal. My first wholesaling commission was a little over $13,000.
That's strong. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to share something with you because if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast right now, there's something Spencer said and something I alluded to earlier, and I'm going to call it humility. Spencer and I have been very blessed to make some pretty good money in home-based businesses, right?
Shout out to Pretty Good Money.
Pretty good money, shout out. But I want the world to know that there are times, especially as an entrepreneur, that there are peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when I went into wholesaling, there was a valley for me financially, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember driving around in my S550.
How about that?
Right. So we're driving around. See, most people, if you've had success, don't want to go out there and act like that they're always good, right? Mm-hmm. So I had no problem. I didn't care what I was driving. It just happened to be that I had to pay that S550 note right, in order to make it work. So what I'm sharing with individuals right now is don't rest on your past success. Mm-hmm. It's okay to get your hands dirty again. Yeah. Because sometimes if you don't get your hands dirty again, you can't till the old soil to get some new soil.
Right.
You know, if you want a new season, you want a new harvest, you got to go out and plant again.
Yeah.
And most people never want to go and replant.
Right.
And that's where the work is.
Yeah. That's definitely where the work is.
So again, we wanted to share that with the audience because again, Mark and I are proof positive that this works. This is not a hypothetical situation. In our time that's remaining, man, talk about some of the deals, man. Talk about, man, look, you have gone on to make millions doing this. Oh, I got to tell them about this as well. One Thanksgiving, we finished the meal, watching football games. I haven't got all the kids around, right? And said, listen, I make millions of dollars doing this. I'm a millionaire selling real estate. I want to show you guys what I do. Now, you never know where y'all, it's kind of like religion. Our job is to plant, God increases, all that kind of stuff. So all he did was plant the seed. You don't know what soil it's going to fall on. I can tell you some of the soil fell on my son and my daughter. Brandon heard that, and my daughter Haley, she's just driven by money. All she heard was the end result, and then just the mess. All she heard, right? Brandon, Haley, and Brandon's business partner Jordan Williams formed a company. Started Haley, what you doing this weekend, Dad? Me and Jordan. Brandon lives in the DMV area. Me and Jordan are gonna drive around and drive for dollars every week. I'm just drive for dollars. Long story short, they applied what Ivan taught them. Did their first real estate deal while Haley was still a senior in high school. Their first, listen to what I'm about to tell you. Their first deal, their commission was over $33,000. Wow. They split a check for over $11,000 a piece. We had to convince Haley that she was going to college. Dad, I'm done. I am wealthy beyond my wildest imaginations. I am done. Then Brandon taught her how to flip it into cryptocurrency. Right. So, kind of going to college for her is like just a exercise of futility. But anyway, but no, it was an amazing exercise. So you're talking about a teenager and two 21-year-olds who, because their uncle shared with them, but how many kids would take that information and act on it? Yeah. And how many would just go and say, no, I'm going to go watch the rest of the football game? Right. So, and again, now that's become a part of their wealth philosophy. Right. Doing what Uncle Ivan has done. So talk about some of your deals. Okay. Some of the big deals, man, what you're doing now, where is Blacktop, real estate and going right now? Okay.
And that's a great point because if you look at the wealthiest people in the world, okay, just Forbes puts out the list every year. So, the wealthiest people in the world. What I want you to do one time is examine how they acquire their wealth, or where their wealth resides. And at least 40% of all of their wealth, at minimum, is going to reside in real estate. What that should tell you is that they've already figured this part out. You can't really be wealthy in this country without being involved in real estate. Not real wealth, because there's nothing else that appreciates at this level. Okay, and they're not making any more land. Okay, God's not creating any more land. Okay, this is what we got. And even though technology has advanced, and that's great, people are always going to need a place to live. You can't live in a virtual house, right?
Right.
So people are always going to need a roof over their head. Real estate's not going anywhere, right? And so this is important, especially for minority communities to learn, because a lot of times that's who we're buying from, unfortunately, because they find themselves in this area of distress. So we have to understand how to keep our properties and how to use real estate as a means to build generational wealth. Okay, stop passing down debt and regret, and start passing down some assets and a future for the generations to come, a financial future, right? And so we've been blessed and fortunate to do a number of deals. I mean, we've done, a lot of deals. I mean, I guess one of the larger, sexier deals, as they say, is we did a deal in Annapolis, Maryland. Funny. The lady who was in the house was an older lady. She is a crazy. She was in court with the owner because they had some napkin contract that they did like 14 years ago where she was going into foreclosure. So the owner of the property at the current time had bought the house from her. They had wrote some, we'll give you a portion of the sale when all this type. So she had basically been living in the home and renting it, but also renting the rooms to other people. And they were in the lawsuit because of all of this different. So again, solving a problem. So we come along like, look, we'll deal with that. We'll get I had built a rapport with the tenant. Like, look, we'll make sure you get some money out the deal, so forth and so on. And so we end up closing on that deal and making over $100,000 in one deal on an assignment fee.
Yeah.
One deal.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So, again, that's the beauty of this business. But the reason I said wholesaling is important to learn is because, number one, all businesses need cash flow, right? But the one thing you don't want to be, if you're a real estate investor, is only involved in wholesaling, because Uncle Sam will eat you up, right? Because it's just cash coming in. It's cash coming in. What you want to start to do is start to be an owner in some shape, form, or fashion. You want to own rental properties. And when you're bringing in the right amount of cash flow, now you don't have debt tied to those properties, okay? Because now you can afford to use some of that cash flow to start to invest in other properties and start to build passive income, which is where the real wealth is when your money is working while you're sleeping. That's where the real wealth is.
Mailbox
right?
money.
And so now you can start to build passive income through rental properties. You can do Airbnb. There's a lot of different strategies, right? But now we're also involved in renovations. The market is hot. I think I heard something on a podcast the other day. They're like, if there's 100,000 listings on average, there's 200,000 people looking for a house.
Wow.
For every 100,000 listings.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
So the demand is still there. Interest rates are still low. So what we learned is like, look, people are making $20, $30, $40, $100,000 offers over listing because they're coming from California and New York and all these places where these prices are nothing to them.
Right.
And so we're like, we got to start keeping some of these and renovating them ourselves. So we're involved in the renovation game, which is, where we're buying deals and we're using our general contracting team to renovate it and put it back on the market and make those larger spreads, right? A lot of times those spreads are larger than what you would do on your average wholesale side. And then you also have the beauty of being able to help other people, right? Other people with money. You'll be amazed at how many people that are out there that have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in a 401k, or just have $150,000 in a savings account, making them zero, actually losing money every day. It's in that savings account. So what we provide is being able to give people the opportunity who may not have the time or interest in a daily real estate, business, our daily real estate model. We give them the opportunity to invest their money in a company that is doing this every day, right? And there's different ways to do that. We have programs where somebody can come in and fund the deal, fund the purchase and the renovation costs. We're doing one of those deals now. Fund the purchase and the renovation, then we split the profits. And this is the beauty of this, okay? Imagine you got $100,000 and we come to you, this is simple numbers. We come to you and say, you got $100,000 in your savings account. You're like, I'm making no money off this. We come along and say, look, we can take that $100,000 and you can get involved in real estate. Your $100,000 will be attached to the asset while we renovate it. If anything ever happened, it'd be your house, right? And so people with money who know how to make money are going to be intrigued by that. What? And so we say, okay, look, with this $100,000, we're going to make you $20,000. You're not going to have to do anything. Okay. But if you want to learn, we'll give you the opportunity to come by the house, talk to the contractor, talk to the subs, see how the process works, talk to our realtor when she listed. You can learn everything about it. But if you don't, when you come to closing, you're still going to get your $20,000. You're going to get your initial investment plus 20.
Right.
So on average, a renovation deal takes about 3 months. You know, sometimes it's shorter, right? But on average, let's say you took that same $100,000, you did that 3 times that year. You've made $60,000 on your $100,000 investment. You've made 60% profit.
Sure.
Okay. Who with money is not going to be attracted by that? And these are low estimates.
Right.
Right.
Right. And so a lot of people with money, they're like, look, hey, once you prove to them that this is what you do, and they can talk to your closing attorney and see other projects that they're like, look, man, look, sign me up.
Right.
Or let's say you're not interested in and you want long-term returns, right? On average, the S&P 500 is going to give you 8. That's the stock market for those of you who don't know.
Right.
The overall stock market.
Right.
It's going to give you about 8 on a really great year. It's going to give you 8% return.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say that you're like, look, I got $100,000. I want to invest it in real estate, something tangible, something I can touch. And we say, okay, well, look, we'll give you 10% a year for 5 years, and your $100,000 will always be attached to an asset, a home. If anything ever happens, you just come get the home, right? Now every month or every year, however you want your payment, we're sending you your 10% interest on your $100,000. Okay, for those of you who struggle with math, 10% of $100,000 is $10,000. So for 5 years, because we usually do 5-year balloon, you can, which means you can get all your money back at 5 years, right? But over that 5-year period, let's say you got $100,000. Over that 5-year period, that $100,000 has made you $50,000. Okay. If you have money, you understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
If you broke, this is hard for you to understand. But talk to me later. Okay. But people jump at those opportunities because where else are they, number one, getting to invest their money in something that they understand and something they can go touch? I can go touch this home and see it.
Sure.
Right? And get these kind of returns without being actively involved in the business. But what it benefits us is if you give me your $100,000 to invest in real estate over 5 years, I'm going to make $400,000 or $500,000 off that $100,000 in that 5-year period. Right? So it benefits us as a company. It benefits that investor. Everybody's happy because they're making money. And people with money, usually they have their money in other places. But now this is just another form of passive income for them.
Man, listen, you have just had, to our listeners on, those of you who are watching on YouTube, listening on the podcast, just a masterclass in not just wholesaling, but just the real estate game.
Yes,
the real estate guys. This is how you build wealth. Proof positive.
Yes.
That this is how you build wealth. How do people find you on Instagram? How do they find you on social media? How do they find you? Do you have a website for Blacktop?
Yeah, our website is blacktophomebuyers.com. Real simple to find. On Instagram, I am at Sneaker RE Investor. The full word Sneaker RE for real estate investor. I'm Iverson on Facebook. You can check out my partner on Instagram as well. Eddie Charger is This Dad Flips. That's his Instagram, as well as his Facebook as well, Eddie Charger. So
and we'll
check
have
us
those
out.
guys. You can find the links right below. As you're, they'll be right there in the show notes as well as on the screen. Also, I see you also doing the Jeep journals, Jeep Chronicles.
I have a little series that I started, because I get so many calls every day about people trying to get involved in real estate, right? And so I'm usually in my Jeep sometime during the day, and so I started this little series called Jeep Journals, where I give out 5 minutes or less a day of just inspirational things, some educational things as well involved around real estate. Sometimes I talk about different cultural topics that are, the other day I put out a video about the whole AKA mess that was happening with Insecure. I don't know if you watched the show, but it was all over social media, and how we need to support each other more. And, so it's cultural things, but it's just my thoughts in a lot of different areas that hopefully are helping people, making people laugh, giving them some instructional things to do if they want to be involved in this business or be involved as an entrepreneur in general. So check that out. It's on my Instagram and Facebook. It's called Jeep Journals. We'd love for you guys guys are watching. Give me your feedback, what you think, and if there's something that you want me to talk about. So
that's awesome,
man. I know you celebrated the birthday. Thank you to you and your wife Toya. You know, who's in the audience today.
My beautiful wife Toya.
Right,
Shout out
right.
to
My
Toya.
beautiful wife Toya. I hope she can hear that.
Shout out to Brownie Points. So, guys, listen. And again, man, congratulations, man. Family, super proud of you. The listeners, thank you for pouring into the listeners, guys. This information costs you nothing. All you got to do is listen.
Yep.
Tune into the podcast, guys. Please go to Success Illustrated. I am successillustrated.com. Subscribe to the podcast, guys. Share it with your friends. Like what you see. Comment on what you see. Guys, my name is Spencer Iverson. We always want you to take this information so that ultimately you can sit right there as the manifestation of having become Success Illustrated. Mark, close us out.
Hey guys, what incredible information we got today. I'll tell you the biggest thing I took away was the mindset, what it takes to be an entrepreneur, regardless of the field. But make sure you watch and rewatch this episode. Make sure you subscribe, like Spencer said. And the most important thing of all, never dream small dreams, because small dreams what?
Don't have magic. Take care, guys. Thanks.
All right. Peace.